Hello, I'm back, and I have 10 easy peasy writing tips to improve your writing. And these are just quick one-offs for longer explanations of these things. You can find plenty of resources on the interwebs, but these 10 things, for starters, will help you be a better writer and will help you train yourself to look for these things in your writing so that you can avoid doing them in the future. So, number one, the words just, very, and that. Most of the time, you can cut those out. Most of the time, they're filler, and you don't need them. I've seen manuscripts that have had the words just and very just sprinkled throughout the whole thing, and it just kind of kills so much greatness of the manuscript. Instead of using very, he or she was very so-and-so, look for stronger nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, descriptive words when you're using, when you intend to paint a picture for your readers. So go through your manuscript and look for excessive use of just, very, and that. Granted, there are some times that you do not want to cut the word that out of your manuscript, but all too often the word that is overused. Also, another word that's overused would be the word and. A very important word, to be sure, but if you see in your sentences that you're using the word and 3-4 times, that's a good indication that you need to break that one sentence up into maybe 2 sentences. So if you see yourself using the word and several times in a sentence, you need to rethink how you're writing that sentence. Number 3, even though they have their place, adverbs and adjectives, when they're overused, just really bogs down writing. Look for stronger nouns and verbs whenever possible. Of course, Mark Twain, I think, said, if you see an adverb, kill it. The ly adverbs are overused quite a bit in manuscripts. So think of ways to make your writing stronger, and your nouns and your verbs have more, make sure they have more impact instead of always going to the ly adverbs. So balance. Next would be balancing narration with dialogue. One thing that really gets on my nerves is when there's a lot of exposition, tons of narrative, and hardly any dialogue at all. I've even run across manuscripts that had no dialogue, and how that would happen with characters in it. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's a snooze fest. Don't do the whole, I'm going to explain everything to my readers, I'm going to tell them everything. Let your characters speak, and let their words and their actions illustrate and demonstrate to your readers. Narration is fun. We do need that. Most of the time, you'll read some writers who don't use a lot of narration. Keep this in mind. When you use narration, it slows things down. When you use dialogue, it speeds things up. So you want a good balance between those two things so that you have a good landscape for your reader. Don't have nothing but dialogue, because your reader is just going to be so bored, more than likely, and just ready to fall asleep. Number 5, cut out scenes that don't advance the plot. Ask yourself, does this scene need to be in here? Is it advancing the plot? Is it important to what's going on, to the characters and what's in the story? If the answer is no, then you need to cut that scene out. It does no good to have scenes in a story, a manuscript, that really have nothing to do with advancing the story itself. So look at your scenes And then ask yourself, does this scene relate to the plot, or is there a reason why the characters need to be in this scene? If not, cut it out. Plain and simple. Number 6, speaking of scenes, I don't know why this is, but eating scenes. I can't tell you how many times I've seen eating scenes in manuscripts, and there's nothing going on. People are eating, but there's nothing that's advancing the plot. I mean, seriously, I've said this before. Unless a monster is coming out of the potato salad and starts massacring everybody at the meal, I don't want to hear about people eating. I mean, long scenes of people eating, and believe me, I've seen this in manuscripts I've edited. And nothing happens. There's nothing that advances the plot, like I talked about previously. There's no reason for it to be there. None. Women and men are equally guilty of this. So please, with the eating scenes, unless there's some reason for that, and make them short. If there is a reason for that, make them short. So, eating scenes, be very careful with those. Number 7. If you know the rules and you understand them, you can break them in writing. If you don't know the rules and you don't understand them, don't break those rules until you do have a good reason and you do understand them. Many writers will break rules, but they understand why they're doing it, and they understand the rule itself. So, if you are a beginning writer, take a look at the rules and make sure you understand why they're there. And that rules do change. Split infinitives are not looked down upon as much as they used to be. Ending a sentence with a preposition is not looked down upon as much as it used to be. Basically, if you're writing a sentence and it's more awkward to write it with the preposition not at the end of the sentence, then it's best to go with the least awkward way. So think of yourself as the reader. Is this person going to stop and go, what? That kind of sounds kind of weird. So go with the least awkward way possible. So 8, I think we're up to. Point of view and head hopping. See this a lot. We've all done it. Beginning writers or intermediate writers also do this. But if you're in one character's head, say Mr. X, the next paragraph, or even in the same sentence, you cannot jump into Ms. Y's head. You have got to stay in one point of view to avoid confusing the reader. Head hopping can confuse the reader, so try to stick to one point of view and don't head hop. Try to stick to one point of view per chapter or per scene or something. Head hopping can get very confusing when your reader loses track of who's saying and thinking what. A good clue to this is if your male protagonist has green eyes, let's say. Well, of course he knows he has green eyes, but if you have in the next paragraph a woman who is looking at him and admiring his green eyes and his physique and that sort of thing, that's a clue. You're in her point of view. You're in her mind. She's looking at him. If you're in his point of view, you can't be in hers yet. Okay? So, now, she can say something like, say something to him like, I love your eyes. They're emerald green and they're just so entrancing. You can think of better dialogue than that. But the point is, there are ways to get across that she likes his green eyes and finds him very attractive without hopping into her head and us seeing him through her eyes, which we can't do if she is not yet, if we're not yet in her point of view. Number 9, readers aren't stupid and they can fill in the blanks. They have imaginations. So you can give a little bit of information about the setting here and there, but there's no reason to do an extensive description of the setting where it gets painfully nitpicky. Let the reader kind of make things up in their imagination, kind of wonder what things look like. You don't have to tell them everything. Here's an example. If somebody gets out of the car and walks into a cabin, you don't have to tell the reader in your, you don't have to write out in your writing, so-and-so opened the car door and got out and then walked across here and they reached for the doorknob and then they opened the door and then no. Okay? We can fill in the blanks that so-and-so got out of the car and went into the cabin. You don't have to explain they turned the doorknob, they pushed the door, they did that. You don't have to have a step-by-step replay. Readers are not stupid. They will fill in things with their own imagination. And number 10, write first and edit later. I always say to throw up on the page and clean it up later. Writing and editing are 2 different processes. Don't try to do them at the same time. Get everything out. Get everything out in your manuscript. How annoying. And then go and clean it up later. Don't get into the trap where you're dealing with 5 sentences and you're on those 5 sentences for 2 freaking hours. No. Get all of your writing out and then go back and edit later. You can always edit things later. Don't expect that the first thing that comes out is going to be exactly what stays. So, no editing when you're writing. Writing first and then editing. So, and I must love that word today because I'm using it. Those are 10 writing tips that might help you or should help you in your writing. If you have any questions, visit my website at nocturnalmuse.com and drop me a line if you have any questions. And other than that, enjoy your evening, and I will be back at a later time with probably 5 or 10 more tips about writing. So if you have any questions, let me know and I'll cover them in the future.